It's that time of the month again. I get to talk about balls with our long-term sponsorship, Manscaped.com. Ladies and gentlemen, by now, you know about Manscaped and you know about the Performance Package 4.0. But for those people who are blessed enough to come here for the first time, it comes with the Lawnmower 4.0, LEDs and all, skin-safe technology. And Manscaped wanted me to remind you, you want to bring this along with the Performance Package 4 because summer's a-coming. And if anything helps you work on your beach bod without any worries, it's the Lawnmower 4.0. The Performance Package also comes with the Crop Preserver, which is an anti-chafing ball deodorant moisturizer that'll keep those gonads fresh, feeling fresh during the summer days when it gets all sweaty out there. And when you are sweating, you got the Crop Reviver, which is a little spritz you put down in your balls, and it feels like a tropical breeze down there all of a sudden. But of course, you've also got the Weed Whacker 2.0. You got those weird nose hairs. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it will help you clean up, especially when you're out on the beach. The Weed Whacker 2.0 comes with a powerful 7,000 RPM motor, and of course, with an improved steel blade system, it is an absolute upgrade over the 1.0 iteration. It's cordless, rechargeable, and has a battery of up to 45 minutes of runtime, so you can really think about all of your nose hairs and grooming specialities with time to spare. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, you also get 2 free gifts with the Performance Package 4.0. And of course, if you go to manscaped.com, you can get 20% off plus free international shipping when you use our promo code SOG at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with promo code SOG at manscaped.com. Remember, summer's around the corner, and when you're hitting the beach, pool, or hanging out with your boys, you'll feel confident and ready to take on the world with an absolutely groomed body. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the video. The first video game console ever released was the Magnavox Odyssey, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine playing Pong inside your house on the big screen. Big for the time, of course. Magnavox Odyssey itself is also another system, like many video game consoles, that has an emulator as well, ladies and gentlemen. You want to play and simulate the Odyssey in your house? You absolutely can. And ladies and gentlemen, even a system like this came with cartridges. Well, actually, at the time, they called them circuit boards. They were actually designed to manipulate the machine's signal path. The actual game graphics would literally just be like overlays you would tape onto your television and call it a day. Ladies and gentlemen, since then, multiple other video game consoles have come out. Consoles from Nintendo, then Sony, Sega, Xbox, you name it. And a lot of these systems have had different forms of physical, media. For instance, Nintendo and Sega used to have the days of cartridges. Then Sony ended up working and designing the CD format, the CDR format, which had 700 megabytes of content that you could store at the time. This blew video games beyond just having simpler graphics, all the way to having grand stories, amazing music tracks, CGI, so on and so forth. One of the best examples for this is Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, so on and so forth, games that at the time released upon multiple different discs. Then, of course, the PlayStation 2 era, Xbox, GameCube era came in, where consoles had DVD drives, 4.7 gigabytes of space, again, blowing up the massive amount of video game graphics that we would have, the stories that we could tell, and the spaces that our players could enjoy. Then, of course, we had the Blu-ray era with the Xbox 360, not the 360.
Oh, wait, we're on PlayStation 3. It's a Blu-ray disc. Dual layered, too.
The PlayStation 3 and so on. Games would jump up and have 25, 50, sometimes up to 100 gigs now with Ultra Blu-ray to play around with. See, physical media is important, and that's the crux of today's video. There's a strange, weird campaign nowadays where I feel like gamers are being gaslit by companies, other stupid gamers, into believing that physical media is nothing more than a digital license that allows you to play a game. Dumbass, you still have to install and download the game from the internet. Day one patches make the game playable. We're going to read a couple of takes that I want to dismantle and destroy today. I want this video to stand the test of time. See, one of my favorite videos in recent history is from The Completionist, when he actually backed up the entire 3DS Wii U library. I think acts like that when it comes to game preservation is important. Look, game preservation is like the hardest thing imaginable. You know, movies, music, a lot of that stuff can be backed up very easily. Video games with digital rights management, the fact that some games don't even ship on a disc, Halo Infinite, I'm looking at you, is a shockingly bad future that I don't want to exist in gaming. Nowadays, with most modern gaming systems, we have the Xbox Series S and the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, two mainstream consoles that don't even have disc capabilities. So again, I want to just preface this by saying right now, when you take away people's options for physical media, okay, media that you can buy and sell and share around, and only allow people to buy from the Xbox Digital Store and the PlayStation Digital Store, well, all of a sudden, your competition on finding deals, owning your video games, gets thrown out the goddamn window. One person says discs are e-waste. Yeah, anything digital can or physical can be e-waste. You know that old graphic card could be e-waste. Old consoles could be e-waste. Yeah, I would actually say the discs are a little less wasteful than entire blocks of hardware. But then again, you know, if you want to talk about being environmentally fucking friendly, then maybe we should stop gaming altogether and contributing to the death of our planet, right? Like if that's how far we want to go. Do you remember Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5? Day one patch made the game playable. If you remember, Pro Skater 5 was actually panned by people on YouTube, news media, so on and so forth, for basically putting the demo on a disc and requiring people to download the game with a patch. Anytime games do this, it makes the rounds on news. Companies get shamed for this behavior. Those games don't necessarily sell all that well because of the negative attention too. Just because one game does it doesn't mean the vast 99% of physical games out there don't actually run day one out of the box. There are things known as certifications for these video games. They have to be playable from the start screen to the credit screen for certain console manufacturers to even allow selling a physical copy. Nobody is going to let you sell a physical copy that doesn't work without the internet without you straight up putting on the box requires internet, or requires a download, requires a persistent connection. Games like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I would have bought on PS5. I really would have. But the fact that the box says requires internet, because yes, you do have to download the rest of the game through the PlayStation servers or Xbox servers, made me just buy the game on PC anyways. If I couldn't own a physical copy to preserve, why the fuck would I buy it on the console anyways? Might as well just get it on my PC. Games don't run off discs. Stop the bus. Yeah, games don't run off the disc. They install off of the disc, Einstein. I thought this was common knowledge. I game on PC. What is a disc? And if we're talking ownership, there's no more perfect way to own a game than a cracked DRM-free version on an SSD. You literally own it at that point. Yeah, except DRM, if you're cracking it, can be against the law in certain cases, and sometimes it's not even the actual possibility. There are tons of games that are left uncracked. Just because a game exists doesn't mean a crack is going to exist necessarily. There are games like Left Alive, a shitty game, but it's still uncracked, meaning the only way to preserve that game is to have it on the PS4 anyways. It's a shitty game, don't get me wrong, but it's a great example of telling people that not everything is cracked, okay? It's just not the case. What people need to realize is that games today rarely are on the disc anymore. What you have on the disc is your license. Yes, most games are actually stored on the disc as well. You can try this for yourself. If you have a PlayStation or an Xbox right now, actually disconnect the Wi-Fi or the Ethernet cable. Put your console into offline mode. Make sure it doesn't have an internet connection whatsoever. Then go grab a disc of your choice, the ones that don't say require internet or a download, stick that into your console and watch it actually install from the disc onto the local hard drive. And none of this is entirely like absent from newer systems like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X. In fact, Demon's Souls, the PS5 version, I installed directly onto the PS5, no internet connection whatsoever, and immediately started playing after it was ready to play, meaning a significant portion of the game data was copied onto the disc, and as you played, the remainder of the game would install in the background. Again, this varies depending on what you play, but as long as that disc doesn't have an internet requirement plastered onto the front, you're fine. And generally, that is a very apparent identifier on the physical media, if it requires internet or persistent internet connection to play. Now, of course, it's, again, a game, most single-player titles work like this anyways. And for anybody wondering, I game on PC, what is a disc? Yeah, optical media on PC died a long time ago. It's a shame, personally, if you ask me. Again, I would love to own my PC games as well, too. But given the fact on PC, an open platform, having multiple different storefronts like Steam, GOG, Epic Games, so on and so forth, allows us different competition and a bounty of sales to dip into. With something you can't do on consoles. You can't do multiple different game stores on the Xbox or PlayStation. You are literally at the mercy of whatever Microsoft or Sony wants to hand you out as a deal. Now, this person says when it comes to a disc, companies can revoke that privilege. No, I actually buy a lot of games before release date anyways. Never once have I ever used it on a system, Xbox included, PlayStation included, where the companies have rejected me from playing a game before release if I own the disc. The disc can be played completely offline without ever touching Sony servers or Xbox servers. From what I understand too, this is very evident in the fact that when I played Resident Evil 4 Remake, I recorded the whole playthrough, uploaded it in one shot. Do you actually believe I recorded that on day of? I don't have connections like game reviewers to these companies and get early access. I actually buy physical copies of these games earlier through distributors, and then I install them offline onto my PlayStation 5, record the playthrough, and then upload it. I've done this with Final Fantasy. I've done this with, Spider-Man. I've done this with plenty of games, played them well before release, okay? I can count on like 2 fingers how many games I've ever received from like gaming companies early, digitally, that I was allowed to play before the game could, before the game launched. Now, of course, recently when it came to like games like Starfield, there was a bit of kerfuffle thrown around where apparently it will not include a physical disc. From what I understand, Starfield will include a physical disc for the standard edition, not the collector's edition. Why gaming companies are deciding to take away physical copies from collector's editions that cost hundreds of dollars now is beyond me, okay? I don't know. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I want to get into why physical media matters. Now, a while back, we actually looked at the Xbox, which, when the Xbox One launched, the Xbox One system, not the series, it restricted disc resales, required a 24-hour daily internet check-in. Now, gamers revolted against this, rightfully so. You should not be buying video game hardware that can be basically turned into a brick if it doesn't connect to servers from Microsoft. Now, I have no doubt that Microsoft servers are going to be around for a long time, but having something tethered to a service is never a good thing anyways. You want to talk about e-waste? Talk about a system that kills itself after 24 hours of not touching an internet-connected service. Now, of course, Microsoft pulled a 180, but the damage was already done. I mean, seriously, go back in time and listen to what Don Natrick said about this Xbox service. Listen to it real carefully.
It's a great line for games.
Yeah,
and I think people are going to love it, and then they're going to understand what we're trying to create and how it links games and entertainment, the functionality of the box, some of the advantages that you get of having a box that is designed to use an online state. So that, to me, is a future-proof choice, and I think people could have arguably gone the other way if we didn't do it, and fortunately we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right.
Yeah, what a condescending fucking answer. But then again, I'm not surprised. This guy ended up working at Zynga anyways, and I'm pretty sure that company's shit out of luck too. Now, of course, Sony made a response to this, which might be the most passive-aggressive form of media advertising I've ever seen. Watch this.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
that gets me every time, dude. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to sharing video game copies physically, that's a big advantage you get too. Do you have a brother, a cousin, a family friend, a friend that you just want to share a game with from time to time? Give them a copy of your disc. That's it. They can play it on their own terms. Now, if you don't have friends, it's a whole fucking different story, but it's a perk that I want to add to the entire situation. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes games can be removed from stores. For instance, Forza Horizon 2 will be pulled from the Microsoft Store. Yeah, Forza Horizon is a series of incredibly popular racing games, and the reason why racing games are usually the first ones to get the goddamn guillotine is because of licensing issues. Yeah, when you have Toyota, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Ford, every single goddamn car manufacturer in your game, licenses are a bitch to upkeep, and sometimes video game companies just have to delist games from sales, because it's a lot easier than going back and simping for a license once again. Now, if you have a disc copy of Forza Horizon 2, hell yeah, you can share that with the boys! Now, of course, this is where I'm going to show you how games are playable without day one patches. Now, for instance, Xbox, which is coincidentally the hardest system to keep, physical media alive on, because of the nature of the system being so connected to the internet anyways. When the Xbox Series systems launched, you literally couldn't play Xbox One games without connecting to the internet and downloading some stupid patch file. Nowadays, from what I know, you can actually put in Xbox One games, load them up entirely, and we're going to show you by connecting my Xbox Series system offline, no internet connection whatsoever, fully updated. It does not have to touch the internet at all. I'm going to put in my copy of Forza Horizon 2, and as you can see, the game is actually just installing. Now, at this moment in time, I'm not touching the internet whatsoever. One of the biggest misconceptions we read earlier was the game is not on the disc. It's just a license key. If that was the case, the system wouldn't be installing something from the disc, would it, Einstein? So now that the game is completely installed, ready to play and whatnot, I can just start up the game and play it. Now, granted, my save files are probably not going to be functional since I'm running the game completely unpatched. Now, from what I understand, you can just connect to the Xbox services and patch the game up and, download all the DLC that you already have purchased anyways, but this is an example of how physical media, if done right, preserves the game even after the internet services have shut down. I don't need a patch, I don't need anything to run the game. So sometimes physical media can basically prevent a game from being completely lost to the obscurity of time. Now, there's a game known as Duck Dynasty on the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox systems, and, Duck Dynasty is not a good game, let's just be honest here. But if you wanted to play Duck Dynasty, you wanted to play as John Luke learning how to be one of the family, then you can load that up on an emulator actual system if you wanted to, right now. And you would not require, Activision servers to be active, the console services to be active. You could just play some good old Duck Dynasty with the boys. Now, granted, that's a terrible game, but hey, the earlier example is Forza Horizon 2, a good game. So if you ever wanted to, wonder why physical media is so important, this is the case. Now, there is another misconception, games are getting too big. And in certain cases, games like Final Fantasy Remake Part 2, the second part of the remake, okay? It's coming out on 2 discs for the PS5. So instead of, requiring people to download games like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Square Enix has actually put and pressed the games on both discs, so people who don't have an internet connection or just want to preserve the game can just run it off of the discs anyways. In fact, towards the tail end of the PS4 lifespan, games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk 2077, games like Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, all shipped on 2 discs, meaning that you would install from one disc, install from the other, and just use the other one, the play disc, as a licensing disc. So that's pretty much what the disc is there for. You don't need an internet connection, you can just install the whole game off of the disc! And I know this is where the video is about to get really goddamn repetitive. But to showcase the idea, I actually dug up more physical media, more games throughout the entire generation, from the PlayStation 4 era and the PS5 era to illustrate my point. One of the launch titles for PlayStation 4 was Killzone Shadowfall. I can easily put that disc in without any internet connection, play the multiplayer bot zone, play the single player, so on and so forth. Well, even throughout the generation and lifespan, there were games like Shadow of War, which I loved this release because I ended up buying it off Amazon for like 20 bucks. I got the core game and even the DLC expansions on the disc. Sometimes when companies release shitty Game of the Year expansions, they don't release all the content on the disc, which is a damn shame. But sometimes they do, which makes preservation even cooler. Hey, you want to share the DLC with your homies? Absolutely can right there. Then, of course, you've got other releases, too, that absolutely will give you a date and time of when games were shittier than they once were. So, No Man's Sky is a game that is the infinite redemption story, okay? It's one of the best games right now. But we all remember how No Man's Sky was back in the day. Now, recently, there's been a bit of gaslighting from CD Projekt Red, like, people like to hate on Cyberpunk 2077 when it originally dropped. Now, I'm using No Man's Sky as an example. The game had a terrible launch. A lot of features were lied about. There were things that weren't even present in the game. Now, I have multiple copies of No Man's Sky. I have a release on the PS5, but I also have the original PS4 copy. Well, if you wanted to, without the internet, you could load up No Man's Sky 1.0 and exactly remember just how bare bones and shitty this title was. Then you can load up the current day release and just look at the amount of changes the game had. When it comes to games like Cyberpunk 2077, this is one of those examples that I feel like people can actually use to tell individuals that you need patches to play a video game. So when it comes to a day one patch, meaning that, hey, the game has just come out, you put the disc in or you download it and it's installing like a gigabyte, 10 gigabytes, sometimes 50 gigabytes of content to patch the game up, fix up bugs well after the game has gone gold, which is when it's printed to a disc, when the master copy is made. Now, when the master copy is printed, at that point, the game is fully playable from start to finish anyways. The patches are literally quality of life fixes and bug fixes in general. Most games that you will play, 99%, can be played off of a disc without any day one patches whatsoever. Sometimes getting rid of the day one patch is actually beneficial. For instance, Assassin's Creed Unity is a game that released well into the beginning of the PlayStation lifespan. They actually dropped the game without a frame rate cap. So if you have the disc copy of the game, you can disconnect from the internet, install it on a PS5, or I believe Xbox Series X, and just run the game at 60 frames per second with the power of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series system. If you only have the game digitally through the store, well, you have to download all the patches and ruin your experience, kind of. You do trade off stability for frame rate, so again, it's entirely your choice. But see, choice is also one of the perks granted with physical discs anyways. When the games don't require internet for no reason, and they're all printed on the disc, having them preserved can be beneficial. A lot of games like Elden Ring have had patches that have reduced the potency of certain items. So for instance, if you want to play the game at a broken state, a state that you may enjoy more, speedrunners definitely enjoy more, delete the patches, install the 1.0 version off the disc, and play like I do. Now, sometimes, yes, patches are required. I have a Cyberpunk 2077 video that I'm working on too, and I have to accelerate it because of CD Projekt Red's gaslighting, but the 1.0 release for the game was so broken that if you load it up on the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One right now, prepare without any patches to absolutely feel the pain. Now, CD Projekt Red once showed how the PlayStation footage looked, and playing it right now, the 1.0 version on a PS5 without any patches, is one of the most painful experiences. You can actually play the game all the way through. Yes, you can. It's very painful, though. This is one of those examples that people can throw up, but it's a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket in comparison to a large amount of games that are completely playable from start to finish. This is one of the biggest misconceptions in gaming, and it's one of those misconceptions I want to actually see nipped in the butt. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of these gaming companies would like nothing better than to see your preservation, your ownership of your video game being thrown away. But at the end of the day, as long as discs are prevalent, you actually own your games, okay? Nobody, no service can reject your system from launching disc copies. Because as long as you have the disc, you can share it, you can play it, and you can enjoy it at your own terms. When gaming completely goes digital, I have no reason to ever buy an Xbox or a PlayStation. At that point, PC gaming is pretty much where I'm at anyways. But if gaming ever completely goes digital and we lose the ability to preserve, back up, and actually own our games, then I don't think I'm ever going to touch video games anymore. Dude, I've got way too much of a backlog anyways. Even games that typically have an online-only component, like Rainbow Six Siege. Yes, if you ever wanted to play the original copy of Rainbow Six Siege with like old Hereford, well, ladies and gentlemen, you can lock and load and enjoy watching some original 30 frames per second gameplay from the PS4 build. Yes, if you ever wanted to play OG Rainbow Six for some reason, you have some limited options. Thank God to physical media. And sometimes even for recent releases like Diablo 4, which in my opinion don't even need the internet to function anyways. What? So you can see a few people run around your game world? That's not what an MMO is, kids. You know what an MMO is? An MMO is RuneScape. Diablo is just a looter shooter that I'm forced to interact with a few people from time to time. This game had DDoS attacks on Blizzard servers, and it locked people out of a game they paid full price for anyways. For no real good reason, Diablo 3 was a game that also required internet, but when they released it on PS4 and Nintendo Switch, you could run the game completely locally without any internet connection whatsoever. I'm sure Diablo 4 could do the same, but hey, we live in a world with connected internet services and live content all day, every day. For better or for worse, unfortunately, this is where gaming, both multiplayer and single player, are actually headed. So ladies and gentlemen, I really want to know what your take on this situation is too. You know, I'm going to add a bunch of things to this video as well, obviously in post-production, to really flesh out my point, but I think I've made every key thing that I wanted. I've been researching this for a long time, and it's a misconception that I really want to nip in the ass anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, defend physical media, preserve physical media, and if your gaming companies try to prevent your physical discs from being functional, then you should absolutely be on their ass. I know a lot of people will say, hey, I don't have space to store physical games, and that's cool, digital works for you. But for the people that are out there spending $80 on a video game, 70, 60, whatever the price is, then if you're not saving money, remember, we used to be told that if gaming went digital, we would get these massive savings passed down to us. Never fucking happened. The games are still the same price whether you buy them on a disc or you buy them digitally. So I may ask you, why would you choose to buy a game digitally for the same price as actually having a physical disc that contains the goddamn game? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a wild misconception, and hopefully, if you didn't know things today, you are finally leaving this video educated. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.